Former White House press secretary to the President of the United States, Donald Trump. It's Sean Spicer. Hey, Sean.
Hi, Sean.
Good morning. Happy Election Day.
Thank you very much. There's something else that we want to talk to you about today. John Solomon at The Hill has got another story that's going to have people scratching their heads. Apparently, before James Comey came out and said that he was not going to suggest charges against Hillary Clinton regarding her home email server, apparently in one of the early drafts of what he was going to say, he accused her, Hillary Clinton, of being grossly negligent in handling classified information. But then he changed that phrase, grossly negligent, to a much softer, extremely careless, which, according to this article, federal law says gross negligence is criminal, where you could actually do prison time. Why do you think James Comey might have done something like that? Or one of his deputies?
Well, I think that's the million-dollar question, because clearly, as Judge Napolitano pointed out earlier, that there is a big concern about the consequences of that, and I think that there's no question that you don't have to prove intent, as the judge pointed out earlier. So you have to ask, why did Comey do this? I think when you look at Comey's actions that he has talked about since leaving office, there is a question about whether or not he truly was trying to tip the scale and achieve certain actions, both during the election season and since. And this is something that I think has probably received less attention in terms of what should get looked into. But clearly, this memo and this changing of the wording does present some concern about what needs to really be focused on when we talk about looking into the actions that have been taken since the election.
Sure. Plus you add the fact that what we have learned since the election is, in the last couple of months, Sean, is that apparently Mr. Comey wanted to continue to pay the dossier people to essentially come up with stuff on Donald Trump.
Yeah, there's so many things that are concerning about what occurred during that period that I think that a lot of the investigations that are going on might be well spent focusing on those things to understand what was really happening, what the intent was of some of these individuals that were, supposedly looking out for the public interest.
Right, exactly. All right. Former FBI Director James Comey, that man right there, under fire for changing his words in the Clinton email case. An early draft stated, quote, "There is evidence to support a conclusion that Secretary Clinton and others used the email server in a manner that was grossly negligent with respect to the handling of classified information." Comey ultimately removed grossly negligent to scold Hillary as extremely careless. The significance? Well, under federal law, gross negligence can be punished criminally, and people can go to jail. Here to react, senior investigative reporter for Circa News, Sarah Carter. Sarah, this is shocking, isn't it?
Well, you know, it is, because there is actually a memo where we know now that was his original intention, to call it grossly negligent. But it's not surprising, Steve, and I think it's because even when he made the announcement last year in July 2016, and came out and made his own decision not to pursue charges, there were a lot of people up in arms, even people within the FBI. Remember, they weren't the only ones investigating. This wasn't just a Comey, McCabe investigation. There were a lot of FBI agents who put in so many hours, had been investigating this for a long period of time. They had seen, and even in his own statements, some criminality, but he decided upon himself, instead of giving it over to Justice Department, it didn't need to go to then Attorney General Loretta Lynch. I know he was concerned about her. It could have been left up to somebody else to just present the facts, as the FBI does, and let them make the decision whether or not this was prosecutable.
Because ultimately the FBI director, Sarah, is not the decider. It's the Department of Justice. But he went out there and he had a press conference with 100 cameras there, and he said, the show's over, everybody go home.
Yeah, absolutely. So there was a lot of concern, even among sources that I spoke to in federal law enforcement, who were outraged by this. I mean, seriously outraged by this. And now I think, as we see this onion peeling back and more evidence coming forward, I mean, Comey's going to have to answer to this, and I'm sure the Senate Judiciary Committee may even ask him to come and testify.
You know, I was looking online after this story broke late yesterday, and some people are suggesting, well, it kind of looks like he was taking a side. He had his thumb on the scale.
Well, think about this. At that point in time, there were so many people, even if you talked in the Washington bubble, people were not in Washington, were not seeing what was happening across America. And they all believed that Hillary Clinton was going to be the next president.
Right.
So let's just put it into politics. The politics of the matter was they didn't want to push charges or pursue charges against somebody they thought was going to be the next president.
Exactly.
And this is what, that's it. And so now everything's unraveling because she didn't become president. So all of these little pieces of the puzzle are coming together, it's unraveling, and now we're aware of what was going on. Now, the next step really is to find out how far this went. And I really believe at this point in time, either the Justice Department or somebody else, either the Senate Judiciary, needs to talk to the FBI agents who were involved in the case. Those are the people that were doing the groundwork, the grunt work.
Well, we had Judge Napolitano on a little while ago, Sarah, and he suggested if the Attorney General was watching, he should impanel a grand jury to try to figure out what exactly happened. What will happen? Stay tuned. It's a crazy story. All right, Sarah Carter from Circa, thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve.
All right.
You're Fox News senior judicial analyst. I'd asked that question generically, but you showed up,
no,
so
answer me
directly.
But you also asked that question maybe a year and a half ago when all this came out, and almost a year and a half ago in July of 2016. July 5, James Comey surprises everybody with a surprise announcement. He's number 3 in the Justice Department, but he's not letting his bosses decide. He has decided Hillary Clinton will not be prosecuted because she was extremely careless rather than intentional with respect to the manner in which she failed to safeguard state secrets on her email system, her private server.
Right.
Well, this is the rare federal statute that doesn't require the government to prove intent. This statute, the government can get a conviction if you are grossly negligent. So I ask you, and I ask anybody watching us now who understands the English language, which is everybody watching us, what is the difference between grossly negligent and extremely careless? Nothing. They mean the same thing. James Comey thought he could pull a fast one on the American people by using a slightly less offensive sounding term, extremely careless, and thereby exonerate her. But legally, it's the same thing. She looked the other way, knowing that state secrets were available for people to hack and that they, in fact, were hacked.
What is it, to sell his book? I mean, why does this come out now?
Well, it's coming out now in response to a subpoena from the Senate Judiciary Committee to the Justice Department, and Senator Grassley released it yesterday. Right. And then Senator Grassley responded by saying, okay, so who rewrote this? James Comey's responsible for what he said, but who did, as we were talking during the break, the redlining? Who actually went in the draft and made the changes? We also learned yesterday that there was a debate in the FBI about whether or not the government had to prove intent. And a young FBI agent stood up to the director and said, Mr. Director, under the law, we don't have to prove intent here. Right. There is enough evidence to convict if she was grossly negligent.
But, Judge, this goes back to a point you have made many, many times on this program, and that is it wasn't the job of James Comey to figure out whether or not she should be prosecuted.
So here's what's in Senator Grassley's mind and the minds of a lot of us looking at this. Why? Why did he, if I may, fudge the standard in order to let Hillary off the hook?
Why do you think? Why?
You know, Loretta Lynch was not going to do anything. He knew he had to do something.
Well, that's what he said.
He didn't yet, so he did something because Lynch was going to do nothing.
Okay, so here's what I want to say to Attorney General Sessions, who's probably watching us now. If Jim Comey was fired for the reasons that the president and you have said, which is for dropping the ball on Hillary Clinton, pick up the ball and run with it. Present that evidence to a grand jury.
Is that too late?
No, it is not too late. And the Justice Department is not bound by Comey's erroneous decision. Let a grand jury decide whether or not she should be prosecuted.
All right. We'll continue to follow it. Thank you, Judge.
Let's hope we get the sound up on the show in the first hour.
Yes.
All right.